This is Charles Hornig, 18 Bacon Street, speaking on Article 16, Amend Zoning Bylaw and Map, Hartwell Avenue area. I am speaking as an individual, not on behalf of any board or committee on which I serve. Hartwell Avenue is tired. Built up between 1960 and 1985, neither the current buildings nor their site plans meet modern needs. For 24 years, starting in 1985, when the town limited development, only one additional site was developed. While things have been slightly better since the 2009 zoning changes, 11 years with one substantial new building built and another in permitting, the area does not meet modern needs. Money. The area's proportional contribution to town tax revenue has declined steeply since 1985 as buildings aged and became obsolete. New buildings built under these proposed standards will be larger than those they replace, built to meet current market needs such as modern laboratory space, have higher rents, and contribute much more tax revenue. Each property redeveloped could bring in $1 million or more each year in new property tax revenue, in addition to traffic mitigation payments and building permit fees. Not everyone in Lexington can afford our current property taxes. Future capital needs will make things even harder unless we find new revenue. Density. Denser development creates other opportunities as well. Businesses can grow in place or nearby, avoiding the current situation where successful businesses leave Lexington for additional space elsewhere. Denser development creates the demand needed to support transportation improvements, such as shuttles and bus service, decreasing traffic congestion. Denser development creates the demand needed to support amenities, such as restaurants and service businesses. New development creates the opportunity for new infrastructure, such as shared parking structures and recreational facilities. These opportunities combine and build on each other to make the area more attractive to tenants and more valuable to the town. Jobs. Finally, we can create good jobs close to where Lexington residents live. I worked in the area for many years. I loved being able to bicycle to work. We also need to do this now. Commercial development on this scale takes time. The time from when the landowner makes the decision to construct a project until the town sees the tax revenue is at least 5 years. We need landowners to start thinking about building in Lexington this year. This is especially true in the current disrupted environment when many landowners and tenants are rethinking their plans. We need to send the message now that they should consider building in Lexington. I assure you that several are listening. These changes are part of the 2017 Hartwell Zoning Initiative, which continues to look at other aspects of the area, including adjusting uses, detailed design guidelines, and streamlined permitting. The changes proposed here are completely consistent with the latest work from the initiative. This initiative will continue to move forward in 2020 with public outreach restarting in October. There are a lot of changes here, some of which are more significant than others. I will start with the easy ones. The motion adjusts lot area and frontage requirements to make existing lots conform. Non-conforming lots create an unnecessary barrier to redevelopment. The motion adjusts setbacks to allow more flexibility in lot layout and building siting. The motion allows buildings along the sidewalk, as in Lexington Center, to create a more walkable district. The motion allows for 6-story life science buildings, where feasible, the size recommended by the town's market consultants. Expanding on that, 6 stories, life science buildings have 15-foot stories. So a 6-story building with a 20-foot penthouse requires about 110 to 115 feet. The fire department can support modern buildings of any height. Where we can, building up rather than out preserves more open space. Now, on some lots, the runway easement limits the height that's permissible, in some cases to as little as 30 feet. They obviously won't be able to take advantage of this increased limit. And there is a design standard that will limit height near roads and the bike path. We've also removed the floor area limit. All our expert advice states that floor area ratio is not an appropriate measure of density for this sort of district. Instead, density will be controlled indirectly by height limits, setbacks, required parking, design standards, and physical constraints. The standards proposed here are stricter than those proposed by the town's zoning consultant. But planning staff and I agree that the limits proposed here will be sufficient to encourage development. These design standards come directly from the town's zoning consultant's work last year and our existing zoning. The motion requires buildings to step back from streets and the bicycle path to avoid a perception of excessive height. The motion requires that 15% of each lot or group of lots be reserved for outdoor amenities. Amenities include courtyards, street side or rooftop terraces, plazas, or passageways for pedestrians or bicycles. Detailed design standards will be developed by the planning board. And the motion reserves space along Bedford Street to widen the right-of-way from 65 feet to 100 feet if that is needed for the improvements identified during the 25% design process, now ongoing. The sustainable design standards were developed in consultation with Sustainable Lexington and other citizens concerned with sustainability. There are significant constraints on how zoning deals with building design issues such as these. The language of the motion respects those limits. The motion requires that buildings over 65 feet high meet the requirements for LEED Silver certification. This sustainability standard is consistent with what the town required at 1040 Waltham Street last year and is clearly achievable in a modern life science building. The standard applies only to buildings higher than currently permitted because building-related sustainability standards such as this must be structured as incentives under state law. The motion requires that buildings over 6 stories high not use on-site combustion for heating and cooling. While this is not achievable in a life science building, these buildings are unlikely to exceed 6 stories. Other buildings with lower ceiling heights taking advantage of the increased height limit would be required to comply. And finally, the motion explicitly gives the planning board authority to add additional sustainable design regulations within the constraints of site plan review and state law. We are moving some district boundaries in order to move all the current commercial districts to the CM district. The ones being moved are hatched in red on the map, and move the lots not being used for commercial purposes to the GC or government civic district, the ones hatched in green on the map. While adding new uses or limiting old ones have been discussed as part of the Hartwell zoning initiative, that part is not yet ready to move forward. In particular, I'm frequently asked how housing fits into the Hartwell story. The short answer is that we have not yet figured that out. Housing is not currently permitted in the area. Today's proposal will not change that. Last year, the Hartwell Zoning Initiative discussed using a Chapter 40R Smart Growth Overlay District in the Hartwell area to address some of our housing need. That discussion has now broadened into a larger look at where across Lexington such districts may be suitable. Nothing being proposed today either interferes with or depends on a future proposal for a 40R overlay district. As important as our housing problems are, We do not need to wait to solve them before we solve our commercial development problems. In theory, these zoning changes could permit the total commercial building gross floor area in the area to increase from 2.3 million square feet to about 6.3 million square feet, resulting in an increase in tax revenue from $10 million each year to $55 million each year. Of course, some buildings are good targets for early redevelopment due to age or obsolete construction, while others are not due to long-term leases, lack of owner interest, or physical constraints. It seems reasonable to expect that perhaps 1/3 of the properties to be redeveloped over the first 10 years. This alone would result in an additional $15 million each year of tax revenue to the town. Traffic safety and congestion is everyone's number one and often only concern with development in the area. If new development happens, it may eventually bring new traffic, but there are mitigating factors. First, more traffic is coming anyway due to growth elsewhere. Only about 1/3 of the traffic in the area now is due to area businesses. The rest is destined for Hanscom Air Force Base, MIT Lincoln Laboratory, or some other destination outside the area. The town has already made important roadway improvements. Bedford Street crosswalks at both Hartwell Avenue and Eldred Street, and partial sidewalk on Hartwell Avenue itself. Most importantly, things will not get any better if we do not permit new development. The town is working towards a major roadway improvement project in the area through the state's Transportation Improvement Program. This project has already started, with the town contributing funds in 2019 to start the 25% design process. Over the next 2 years, this will result in a complete design for significant roadway improvements to Bedford Street, Hartwell Avenue, and Wood Street. Once the design is complete, getting to the front of the line for federal or state funding for construction will depend on convincing the state that this project supporting this area should get funded under the state's criteria for economic vitality. They will be looking for results. New life science buildings under construction will send a strong message. The TMO1 district plan regulates parking and transportation demand for new developments in the area. The planning board is in the process of updating that plan. That updated plan should require important improvements to the area, such as shared parking, electric vehicle charging stations, solar canopies over parking, financial contributions for transportation infrastructure improvements, and robust requirements for shuttle services and other transportation demand management measures. But putting requirements in the plan won't help if there is no redevelopment to trigger their application. The developed footprint of the Hartwell Avenue area is not going to change, but what happens within that footprint will improve significantly. Buildings taking advantage of the increased height limit will meet sustainable design standards, both those in the bylaw and those adopted through planning board regulations. In addition, redevelopment following modern best practices will decrease stormwater and pollutant impacts on wetlands, decrease impervious surface through replacement of surface parking lots with structured parking, be more energy efficient through adoption of modern standards and materials, be resilient to flooding, and allow energy efficient alternative transportation through increased density. Again, if there is no redevelopment, there will be no improvement. We need action now, not next year. We have been working on the Hartwell zoning initiative for 3 years now. Each year, we decide that we should wait just a little longer for a better proposal. It is time to see some results. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.